Welcome to Brampton Focus. It's called We Rise Together, and it's a Peel District School Board action plan to support Black students. Now, whether you have someone in the school system or not, it truly is a worthy document to read and make reference to, and you can gain access through the Peel District School Board website. My name is Michael Charbon. Next, we meet Suzanne Nurse, who is a school trustee, and Miss Fiona Lloyd-Henry, right here, next on Brampton Focus. Welcome back to Brampton Focus. Well, it's a situation that is called We Rise Together. It's the Peel School District Board's action plan to support Black male students. 87 respondents were taken into a small room and asked lots of questions, one would say. High school students from grades 11 and 12. There is a need to address this topic, and there is a need to expose it both to teachers and to the general public. When you look at a situation where there's a certain segment of the population, which it looks from what we can read is not being fairly represented or attended to, one has to make a report. And that's what this action plan is. The two ladies who are here with us today in Brampton Focus, right beside me is Miss Fiona Lloyd-Henry. She is an instructional resource teacher, and beside her is Miss Suzanne Nurse, who is a public school trustee for wards 2 and 6. Ladies, thank you very much for joining us in Brampton Focus.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
An important document, and what I want to do is I want to spend segment number 1 of our program informing the folks at home about what the Peel School District did in putting this together. It's called We Rise Together, and that's very embracing. The other line says it's a district to support Black male students. Why would we focus a report specifically on Black male students?
You would like to start?
I could. The We Rise Together report came as a result of a number of different reports that were done in Peel. The FACES report that was done by United Way, which demonstrated, for example, that Black students didn't feel as if they had an equitable chance to be successful. There was also a report by the Ontario Alliance of Black Teachers that basically said the same thing. Black students are not achieving equity of outcomes. That means many Black students are leaving schools not having achieved as much as their peers have and not feeling a sense of well-being that other students were enjoying. So this report is in response to those reports and to a general sense that Black students weren't having an equitable chance to be successful.
The title of your report says to support Black male students. Is the suggestion then that female Black students succeed far better than their male counterparts and didn't deserve to be represented in this report?
No, I wouldn't say that. As for what Fiona said, a lot of this came out of previous reports, and those reports looked at Black male students. And actually, if you even pull it out of Peel region, this is not something unique to Peel. I would say this is a larger societal issue when it comes to the marginalization, specifically of Black males, which is what I believe has led us to focus on Black males in this report.
My purpose in segment number 1 is not to challenge you, it's to gain information. So I appreciate you being forward with us, and I'm not posing questions because I want to hear what you have to say, because it's not my point here to be an agitator. Right. So the scope of this report is quite extensive. It's over 24 pages in length. It goes very much in depth. Yes. What did you learn from this? I mean, you have to deal with the teachers, Fiona. You have to go to them and say, here, this is what I'm recommending. Whereas Susan, you're an elected official, right. So you have to justify your position because you are elected by the people from wards 2 and 6.
Absolutely.
What did you learn from this that gives you more power to be able to speak to teachers to consider this?
Two of the things that stand out for me is when students, the part of the report that describes students feeling as if they're excluded when they're in schools. They don't feel as if they belong. They don't feel as if their peers and their teachers treat them fairly. And that's something I think when I speak to teachers, I talk to them about what it is like to feel the need to perform in an environment that is basically hostile. And I think that is something that almost anybody can identify with. When you think about you could put yourself in the shoes of a young student who arrives at school and who wants to do well. Most people want to do well at whatever they try to do.
But I wouldn't assume that it's a hostile environment when I arrive, though.
Well, but the students in the report describe school as a place that's basically hostile.
So let's talk. These were high school students between grades 11 and 12,
Right.
and 87 students were solicited for this. All black male students?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, so what region of the Peel Board of Education did they come from?
We did schools from Caledon to Mississauga, so we made sure there was a good representation, Caledon, Brampton, and Mississauga. So we covered all three.
So from a question that would be raised immediately from economic standpoint and from a social standpoint, would you say it's a level playing field with high and low, or was it focused in certain areas where there was more concentration of black students?
There was, we tried in the report to have as wide a cross-section as possible. So students were there who were engaged, students who were doing well, who were being successful, and some students who were less successful. And demographically, the areas also varied. So
the 87 respondents, were they volunteered or were they solicited to participate? Did they volunteer when they heard, oh, they're doing a study, I have something to say, or we're doing a study, we want you to say something?
A combination.
it was a combination of the two. Yes.
So when you read this report, there are many things that one can take from this report. How well received is this from the standpoint? I would suspect it's well received in your community. How is it received in the general community? Why are you smiling like that? What does he mean by that?
Because we like to smile. Come on, we should be smiling. I would say from the black community, the response has been varied. And I think that's because there's many who believe we've been researched to death. So why is this any different? What are you going to do to help me believe that what you say you're going to do in the report, you're actually going to do?
People want tools. You've
Understandably
identified some very important points in here. There are some that we can debate infinitum. There are others that you can absolutely accept at face value, and there's others that you read and you kind of say, really? And that's a reaction from any level, from anybody's perspective. Is there one key thing here that allows you to manufacture or create a tool that's going to make a difference? Because I think Susan, what you say is very true. We've been given a lot of lip service to this problem, and it's not just a problem in Peel region. There is a larger problem. You can attribute that to systemic racism, participation, whatever. Did we arrive at a tool that we can use in the Peel region to help this?
I hope so. I mean, there's been a lot of thought, a lot of work put into that report. So it's not just the report on the respondents from the focus groups. It's also the action plan. But we don't believe that we've solved everything. We don't believe that everything in that action plan is the be-all and end-all, which is why we've done community consultations. We had our first one December 10th, which was held at our head office, and we'll have another one in January, so that we can get that feedback from the community to help us understand, are we on the right track? Did we put in something there that shouldn't be, or are we missing something? Is there a glaring area that this report has completely missed? So it has to be that two-way street between the board and the community at large.
Suzanne Nurse, a public school trustee for wards 2 and 6, and the lovely and talented Fiona Lloyd-Henry, an instructional
How come you got lovely and
resource
talented?
teacher. Well, I had to say that because that's right. You're an elected official. This poor lady's got to go and pitch it, right? My name is Michael A. Charbon. You're watching Brampton Focus. We're talking about a very interesting report. It's called We Rise Together. It's a report from the Peel School District about an action plan to support black male students. When we come back, we're going to drill down a little bit and ask some specific questions that relate to some of the interesting topics and suggestions that they found out in this report. It's something that you want to learn about and something that the community needs to hear about. My name is Michael A. Charbon. We'll be back with more right after this. Welcome back back to part 2 of Brampton Focus. We're talking about We Rise Together, a very interesting document here with regards to the Peel School District, and it talks about supporting black male students. Within this program, there are 4 pillars, and we've got 2 of the people who are responsible for. First of all, one, Miss Fiona Lloyd Henry, who is an instructional resource teacher, who goes in front of teachers and brings this forth to them and lets them read this and supports them to understand the aspects of this. And beside her is Miss Suzanne Nurse. Suzanne Nurse is a public school trustee for wards 2 and 6. In our first segment, we got a really good overview, I think, at least of what the program was trying to create. But more importantly, we wanted to drill down in segment number 2 and talk about the pillars. And the first pillar I wanted to talk about was engagement with the community. When you talk about engagement with the community, how do we wrap in education and black students to talk about engagement with community?
Well, one of the first things that we did is commit to the community that we're going to have a community consultation on the report. So the very first one that we did was December 10th. It was on a Saturday at our head office, and we sent out the invitation far and wide for people to come hear about the report, but not just hear about it, to comment on it. So that's where the authenticity comes in, and that's where the understanding that we don't have all the answers, that this is going to be a collaborative effort. So we wanted to hear people's honest feedback about, did we go too far? Did we go not far enough? What's missing? What needs to be deleted?
So the obvious next question is, what did the community say? What was the response?
You know what, for me, that came out loud and clear, sorry, Fiona. What came out loud and clear to me is that the black community does not have faith in public education. So our job,
that's not a very good statement.
it's not a good statement, but if we want to do better, we have to be honest about that, and we have to name it. And it's not just reestablishing that trust, it's establishing the trust between public education and the community.
So I have to ask another question. If the black community does not feel that they have faith, is that the right word we would say, or trust in the educational system, what would the same question be for white students? Do they then have faith in the education system, that they have trust in the education system?
Neither of us wants to comment on what each person would like to say. One of the things that we found from the consultations about engaging with the black community about what's happening with black students in our schools, that's one of the feedbacks that we got, that, you know what, we need to do a little bit more as a board to not only engage with the community members, but help to build trust among...
That's a sad opinion, though. That's a sad thing to be said, that a community doesn't... That's sad. It is.
However, if you
we failed then.
If you have a whole segment of the society that feels that in spite of their best efforts, or sometimes maybe not enough effort, their students are not achieving either equitable outcomes as far as academic achievement goes, or they're not feeling a sense of well-being when they go to school, then that is what happens. But the action plan is not only about looking back at what's happening, it's also about moving forward.
Absolutely.
It's about...
all right, well, let's move forward. There's a second pillar. There's 4 all told that we want to cover. It's delivering bias and anti-racism professional development. How does that fit as a pillar? Because that's a loaded statement there.
It is. And you know what? Many of us have biases. Some biases we're not aware of. And talking explicitly about those biases, the biases that you have about what somebody may be able to achieve or not achieve, about what somebody comes to school with or doesn't come to school with, these are things that we're talking about. And as we talk about them and get a firm understanding of where we sit, where we position ourselves, and understanding where other people come from, that's a good foundation to begin. Nobody's naming any one person as being a person who's coming into a space with racist or bias.
Well, systemic racism is the first thing that comes to mind when you read this. I mean, deliver bias and anti-racism professional development. Is that not to say that teachers and professionals in the education system have to be more cognizant of curtailing or fashioning things so that it's not said or meant in a way that would support systemic racism? That's a mouthful. You got to tiptoe. You got to tiptoe on this.
Teachers have a heightened responsibility because they're not only are they citizens who are prohibited from being discriminatory, but they're also professionals who have an added duty to care. And so when we look at this pillar, we're talking about people understanding where they are and understanding where students are, and understanding that we have a heightened need to meet students where they are.
Right. The third pillar is integrate in experiences of Black Canadians into the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? People aren't always necessarily, I'm a bad person and I'm not going to try to integrate the experiences of Black Canadians into the curriculum. But where people have not been taught themselves about Black experiences, they may need to learn about, well, how can I do this?
The Underground Railroad is one of the most amazing successes that we could hang our hat on. And that comes to mind with me. We're not asking you before we did this interview, and that's true, right? Yeah. I mean, there's lots of things that we can talk about. Black History Month is a very supportive month, is it not?
And we'd like to see this becoming sort of a culminating place where students see themselves every day in the curriculum. Right. So we're not positioning Black students as an add-on, but as an integral part of our classroom spaces.
So I have about a minute left in this segment, and I want to get to the last pillar. It's inspire Black students for leadership and engagement. That's a wonderful statement.
That is a wonderful statement, and it speaks to the understanding that students play a part in this as well. That this is not being done to you. This work is done for you and with you. So we'll be providing students with opportunities to explore their leadership capabilities, to connect them possibly with mentors or opportunities so that they could really come into their own and really have a good understanding that they have great potential. I
have to say that is one area that I think we are so fortunate in the GTA at large. There are so many leaders in all communities, but if you look in the Black community, you have so many successful men and women, sports, entertainment, in business. That is, in a personal position, I think that is a pillar that really needs to be brought up because it gives you the faith that you can, because they did and you will if you do.
You're right, and that's the heartbeat of that particular pillar, to pull in those resources, those individuals who have been coming out and bless them. They've been calling, they've been emailing, we want to be part of this, how can we help?
Do you think your 87 respondents who contributed to this, grades 11 and 12, read this report? Do you think they did? Because it would be interesting to hear. I'd love to have one of them say, so dude, you commented on this and there's so much valid business in here. Did you read it? Did you get something? Did you ever get a feedback on that?
You know what? Since the report came out, quite a few students have gone on air, or you could see comments that people are writing on websites and so on about the report. And a lot of people are coming forward and saying, you know what, this validates what we've been feeling, because this wasn't just a one-off where I've been made to feel like I'm the bad person in this, where I can see that this is something that goes beyond me.
In our final segment, we're going to talk a little further on this. I would suggest to you that this report would have some real validity to many other communities, for them to reflect upon this. And look, it's just not a poignant piece for the Peel District School Board. I think this may be interesting to have some other communities look at this, because it's an excellent document. When we come back, our final segment with Fiona Lloyd-Henry and Suzanne Nurse, and we're talking about We Rise Together, a Peel District School Board action plan to support Black male students. My name is Michael A. Charbon. You're watching Brampton Focus. When we come back, we'll tie a bow on this and talk a little bit about the merits of this and how we can make this even better. My name is Michael A. Charbon. Back right after this. Welcome back to Brampton Focus, joined by these two lovely ladies, Miss Suzanne Nurse, who is a public school trustee for Wards 2 and 6, and right beside me, Fiona Lloyd-Henry, who is an instructional resource teacher. We've been talking about this very extensive report. Now, it's called We Rise Together, the Peel District School Board's action plan to support Black male students. You can read this report online. And listen, if you care about education of all students, regardless what race, what creed, where you go to school, there are valuable points. This is a worthy report and has a lot of great information in it. And it gives you pause for reflection of yourself, of your students, of the educational system. And anytime that you do that, it's good. Where can you find this online?
peelschools.org. It's on the homepage.
Okay, and really, this is a heck of a report. There's a lot said in here. There's a lot of meat to discuss. This would be a great Facebook forum with a lot of people commenting.
Actually, that would be good.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of meat. One of the things that I wanted to pose as a question for you is education is very much a two-way street. What you bring into the classroom sometimes is what you get out. As a teacher, when you have 30 students, you have 30 individuals that you have to address. And the attitude you bring to class every day may have a reflection on what kind of response you get from the teacher and how much you are engaged in the classroom. I use the example of being stopped by a police officer and getting a traffic ticket, and when you roll the window down, you say to the cop, "What the heck are you doing, wasting your time? Why don't you go to the donut shop and have a coffee and catch real criminals?" The expectation of getting a break on your ticket is highly eliminated because the attitude off the top. When you see the title here, Peel School District Board's Action Plan to Support Black Male Students, what obligation do you feel Black students have in bringing themselves to class to be able to succeed?
You know, Fiona, I think you had a wonderful
you know what?
brimming to answer that question. I can see that.
I can tell you that with a traffic, I don't know if I agree with the analogy, when a police officer stops somebody, that's the only time you're seeing that person. Whereas with a classroom teacher, you would have had time to help work with your students to develop the climate in your classroom. So that's a whole different thing. So if the person on one occasion is rude, here's a chance for you to decide, you know, is this the whole person? Or is this something that's happening with a student that might have led the student to respond to me like that? Plus, you know what? We have a heightened responsibility as educators to be responsive to all students, including those who may make offhand or rude comments. And yes, students have a responsibility to be respectful and to understand where they are and understand the classroom space. But educators also have a responsibility to be respectful to students.
Right. When you talk about social stigma, what about the successful Black student who has flourished in the education system, who has succeeded and has faith in the education system? Is this report a slap in the face for the successes that he or she has achieved?
Absolutely not, because the actual research that was done was not just with students who were not successful, it was also with students who were. So their feedback, their input about, so what do you believe has helped you become successful, was integral in forming this report. So they have a stake in this as well. They've had a say in it as well. And for the students who have done well, wonderful, we bless you. We want to find out from you what worked, and taking from that to make sure that we can support other students to become successful as well.
So, Suzanne, you are a school trustee. You have to be responsible and accountable to the people in your wards 2 and 6. I just want to give you a minute here to talk to your folks in wards 2 and 6 and reflect upon this and how they can get involved, how they can learn more, and what your hopes are as a result of releasing this.
Absolutely. One of the first things people could do is register for our next community consultation, which is January 21st of the new year. If you go on our board website, you will see a link to get yourself registered, and that will be held, it's a Saturday from 10 to 2 at Turner Fenton Secondary School. So that's the first thing they could do. The second, of course, is take the time to read the report. As you said, I'm really happy you said it. I believe it's a very powerful report. The next step of this is we've actually decided we're going to do a student census in Peel. So starting January of next year, we're going to start the research so that by the end of 2018, we'll do that student census, get an idea of who our students are from a demographic standpoint and how they're doing. So I always say that you can't manage what you don't measure. So if we are doing all this great work, how do we know it's actually taking an effect? So I'm looking forward to that survey in 2018 to give us some more feedback about So how is this going?
I'd love to have a result of this and talk about some of the successes. I mean, you always look at iconic members of our business, education, sports, who come to the fore and say, I can do it, you can do it. We really should start to acknowledge successful students of all races and all colors in the PO region. We should establish something to, you know, again, all boats rise with the water, right? Suzanne Nurse, thank you very much for being here, bringing this to Brampton Focus. I appreciate this. Fiona Lloyd-Henry, when you present this to teachers, if there was one thing, you know, we can do the bewitched, you know, where you wiggle your nose and you get that thing. Is there one thing in this report that, and I love your smile and your passion, because you really have the students at heart. Is there one thing in this that you wish you could make happen like that?
I wish all students would be able to go to school every day and have a sense of belonging, feeling valued and feeling as if, you know, this is a space that I can be comfortable and I can thrive in.
Right.
If there are students that are still experiencing problems, more so than they should be experiencing, is there an outlet for them to gain assistance and to reach out to?
There's usually levels that you work through. If you're an elementary school student that you're feeling that you're not being treated fairly, of course you bring that to the attention of your parents.
Right.
And the parents, you work through the teacher. If you're not feeling that you're being heard from the teacher, vice principal, principal, eventually if you're going through all those levels and still not feeling satisfied, absolutely. Call your local trustee. That is what we're there for.
Suzanne Nurse, Public School Trustee Wards 2 and 6, and Fiona Lloyd-Henry, an instructional resource teacher. The program is called We Rise Together, and you can see it on the Peel District School Board. My name is Michael A. Charbon. You've been watching Brampton Focus. Thank you for being with us. We'll see you again soon.